Might I point out that the differentiation between fictional and non-fictional texts is relatively new development. A
Mhm.
stable understanding of fictionality was established around Shakespearean times, such as You Like It. In other words, for 3,000 years or so, since writing was a thing, there was no real concept of fictionality. So those who wrote the Bible did not only did not care for factuality, but had no concept of it.
Mhm.
Hi, my name's Leo WT, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation.
Friends, how are you? I'm Leo WT. If this is your first time here, welcome to Conversations. If this is your 100th time here, also welcome to Conversations. But just in case you don't know what's up, Conversations is a regular and intentional podcast and spiritual community where we do intentional conversations about spirituality and life and the intersection of the two. And really, the single biggest tenet of Conversations is that literally everybody's voice matters in the conversation. That's the only presupposition that you have to come to the table with. You can be from any place, any position, any understanding, and we can still meet in the intersection and have a good conversation. And that's what we're here to do. I have with me tonight a good friend of mine who is the second person ever to complete a three-peat on Conversations. It's a pretty big deal, right? It's a
Let's
pretty
go,
big deal.
people. Let's go. I
I'm going to
love
let
it.
him introduce himself for those of you who haven't met him before. And then we're going to dive in and I'm going to ask him some questions that I've really been wanting to ask a real pastor since I'm just a fake one.
Well, Leo, I'm pretty competitive, so I want to be the first four-peater
There you
on
go.
on the show. So we'll have to schedule something in the near future. So
Sounds good.
I'm Adam, and I'm a pastor at Clackamas United Church of Christ, just outside of Portland, Oregon, and also write for the Raven Foundation. I've got, I'm on all the socials except for that thing called Twitter or X or whatever.
Yeah, I'm
I
out on that.
refuse. I refuse. So Threads has taken up some of my time lately. So
There we
so
go.
that's good. Also, I've got the Pastor Adam at the adamerickson.org website. So you can check me out there. So
Yes, and you have
just
a
out.
podcast, right?
Oh yeah, I've got the One Question with Pastor Adam podcast. So it's fun. I love it. So, and doing the TikTok has brought up all kinds of different conversations. I know that one of my recent TikToks inspired this conversation with you, Leo, and
Absolutely.
I'm excited to talk some more about it. So
Absolutely. For those of you who haven't caught Pastor Adam before, you're going to want to make sure you go back on YouTube, on Apple Podcast, on Spotify. Check out the previous conversations because every one of them is a freaking gem. I'm not going to lie to you. Someone who's been in the church my entire life and met a lot of pastors and even wants to be a pastor myself. I really would consider Pastor Adam on my executive board of directors. If I was to compile a list of people who I thought would help me become the best me, Pastor Adam would be at that table. So I'm really excited to kind of just pick your brain about this. You know, I think everybody who I describe you to, I describe you as the church sign guy with the church signs that are slightly sassy and go viral quite frequently, which I love because I think it's iconic to make something like a church sign become sensational, right?
mhm.
But you speak about real things in a real open and honest way, and from a way it is authentically Christian. But basically, the Christians, a lot of them don't think you're Christian enough. And sort of the people in the non-Christian can't think you're too Christian. So you're just making everybody mad and you're having
Awesome.
real conversations. And I love that.
I love it too. I love it too. Yeah, I mean, I'm not out to make everybody mad. I'm just out to say what I think is true,
Absolutely.
and what I think is true about God, and that makes people mad. And I could be wrong. I don't know. I could be wrong. Could be wrong
Right.
about the whole thing. I always try to remind myself that I could be wrong, so that I don't become a progressive fundamentalist.
Oh, yes.
Because I think one of the things about fundamentalism is that you think you are right
Mhm,
and everybody else is wrong.
mhm,
Nobody else has any truth.
mhm.
Everybody has to be just exactly like you. Otherwise, they're heretics or whatever.
Exactly. Exactly. I think you're so
So
accurate because that there is, I've met so many people where like I've been just as attacked and maligned in Christian circles as I have in non-Christian circles. And it's the same energy that comes around it. And that's it's that I'm right, that inflexibility. And guess what? You went to opposite ends of the spectrum, but you came back together and it still feels like the same type of relational and emotional overstepping and abuse. And I absolutely is that's something I'm interested in studying further, like sociologically, because it's fascinating. How can you believe such different things, right? And then your actions become the same, so you're indiscernible. Like I can't tell, you know?
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I should put a caveat on that. I could be wrong, but I am going to bet my life that I am right,
Hmm.
that God is love,
Hmm.
and that I should live my life by the two greatest commandments that Jesus talked about, which is love God and love your neighbor as you love yourself, who includes even your enemies.
Hmm.
So I could be wrong about those things, but I am going to live my life as if those things are true because as far as I can tell, for me, it is it is the way to live the good life, a,
Hmm.
a more beautiful life, a better life, a truer life. So that's what I'm picking,
Yeah.
and who knows? But
Right.
that's what I'm picking.
I love that. So I want to be a pastor, which is absolutely a conversational non-starter, right? People are like,
Yeah.
what in the actual hell are you thinking, right? Like you want to pay all this money, you want to go through multiple processes where people can gatekeep you at any juncture, all to make poverty wages to talk about an antiquated book that's caused wars and destruction of families and all sorts of strife in the world. And pretty much I just say, yeah. And the conversation is hard to find from there. But one of the things I like about you is you have, you say, I think it's in the One Question with Pastor Adam podcast, where you say you're a pastor to fallen Christians and faithful atheists. And just in engaging with your church community online, I've seen such a wide breadth of people that may or may not be Christian, may or may not have come to it from a particular perspective, but you have an open postured way of looking at the text and of building a community that I think is absolutely something that the world should be learning from.
Yeah, unfaithful Christians and faithful
There you
atheists.
go. There you go. I knew it was
That's
in my brain
yeah,
somewhere.
you were close. You were close. Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of what Christianity is. Let's go to the Gospel of John, chapter
Yeah,
1,
let's do it.
and there it says that in this Jesus person we have discovered it has been revealed to us who God is,
Mhm.
and in Jesus we have received condemnation upon condemnation. No, that's not what it says.
It's not it.
It says, in this person, Jesus, we have received hell upon hell. No,
You're
no,
playing
people.
us.
No, no, no. You like this? We could go on and on with what you typically think Christianity is about,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
The bad guys get what they deserve.
mhm,
In Christ, who reveals God to us fully, we have received grace upon grace.
mhm.
And that is where I think that's a good place to start our theology
I
about God.
agree. Absolutely.
It's also a good place to start our anthropology,
Mhm.
because grace is given not because you deserve it, but because, hey, guess what? Can we cuss on this show?
Yes, you
Hey,
can.
guess what? You fucked up.
Boom. Done.
And guess what? That means you're human.
Yep.
And guess
Absolutely.
what? There is grace upon grace for you.
Absolutely.
This
And
is
you,
not obviously, this is not like mean, hey, it's okay, right? The grace that is received is a grace that is transformative,
mhm.
and it transforms the disciples. I mean, I love the fact that the disciples always get it wrong.
Always,
We tend to,
always.
right? we tend to think that the disciples are like the superheroes. No,
Uh-huh.
they are the anti-heroes of
Yes.
the Gospels, right? I mean, they are fighting with one another about who has power. They are wanting to be first, and Jesus always has to say, "The first will be last, and the last will be first." If you want to follow me, you better serve people. I came
Mm-hmm.
not to be served, but to serve. Think about that. If
Mm-hmm.
that's our theology, God comes not to be served, but to serve.
Mm-hmm.
That transforms everything. I mean, this is what I love about Christianity. But once you like start reading all this stuff, it flips everything we thought about God upside down.
Yes, very, very
If,
much so.
yeah, yeah. And if Jesus is who the gospel writers say he is, the full revelation of God, then God is the servant, not the king.
Mm-hmm. That is okay. So, and this is why I love talking to you. And what I'm hoping to get out of our conversation is you start from such a different place than American Christianity is at, right?
Mm.
And from where you're starting, it's indiscernible to get to where we're at in this sort of American evangelical God, guns, in the Bible milieu. That's not a thing, right? If you start from John 1 and you start from grace and love, how do you get to a pro-Israel or a restrict the borders or everybody should have the right to open carry? Like, these are just all things that American Christianity in particular
Yeah.
believe that should be true. And you know what they do is 9 times out of 10 is the Bible.
Yeah.
And I have a real problem. Maybe I'm looking for my own language in this conversation, right? How do I explain why I still read the Bible when we know, scientifically speaking, a lot of the Bible didn't happen like it was written, right? The Bible is not a history book, and we do it in injustice when we hold it to that standard. But how does the Bible guide you in finding this place with God in the world where we are right now, when to so much of the world it's just a book that is either a big fairy tale, or more insidiously, it's a weapon that has clubbed a lot of people to death. Like, what value does the Bible have there? Because all these folks are like, I've got my gun here and I got my Bible here and that's all I need. Like, talk to me about that. Like, why is the Bible valuable to you, and how is it valuable in a broad sense in moving the world to a place that is not so hateful and exclusionary?
Yeah, well, I'll start off with this, and you've heard me say this before, that the point of Christianity is not the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
We're not Biblians. We are
Mm-hmm.
Christians. The point of Christianity is Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So Christ is, as the New Testament says, Christ is the full revelation of God.
Mm-hmm.
Christians go around pretending, acting like the Bible is the full revelation of God.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. The New Testament for Christians over and over again says that this is about Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Is 2 Timothy 3:16 correct, that the Bible is inspired by
Mm-hmm.
God? Yeah, God breathed. Yeah, of course. Yeah, and you know who else was God breathed? The first man, Adam.
Mm-hmm.
And he messed up. He didn't get God right. He's got to go hide from God because he knows he done messed up.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
And God comes after this is so important. God comes to Adam and Eve. You see this right in the beginning. First humans. God comes to Adam and Eve. They're hiding. God says, "Where the hell are you? You messed up. I'm out to get you." No, no. God says, "Where'd you go?
Mm-hmm.
Why are you hiding? Who told you these lies?"
Mm-hmm.
God's not out to get them in a sense of trying to punish them. God is wanting to be in relationship with them, and something broke the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I have a friend, Sandra Goodhart, who's, I'm into mimetic theory, and Sandra Goodhart is, he taught literature at Purdue University.
Okay.
English. He says that after that point with Adam and Eve, when they eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, they think that they possess the knowledge of good and evil, and they know more about God than they actually do.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole rest of the Bible is about humans thinking they know more about God than they actually do. And even more, even more to the point, what Sanders says is that something has been broken in that relationship.
Mhm.
And the whole rest of the Bible is how that brokenness gets played out
Mhm.
through misunderstandings
Mhm.
of God and through what I think the Bible really reveals that often gets hidden by Christianity because we're just talking about God all the time.
Mhm.
The Bible has a really powerful anthropology to
Mhm.
it. Uh, here's one of the answers to your question. If you read the book of Joshua, no, I'm sorry, if you read the book of Judges, you will find a cycle that never ends of violence.
Mhm.
The way that the book of Judges thinks, it's presented anyway this way, the way that to solve our problems of violence against us is with our own violence. And what the book of Judges reveals is that ain't going to solve the problem.
It's just going to keep going.
It's just going to keep going. It's just going to keep it all in circulation.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the Bible is about. It's a warning of our own propensity to othering people, to violence. And we gotta say, I gotta say, in the Bible, the God character often uh, endorses that violence.
Yeah, that happens a ton in the Old Testament, right? Like, and I'm going to say specifically the Old Testament because I won't speak for the Hebrew Bible because I'm not a Hebrew Bible scholar, right?
Good.
So I recognize that we Christians appropriate parts
Good.
of the Hebrew Bible, but I think it's particularly Christianity that has perpetuated this violent God.
Yep.
What how do you see that? How do you handle that? What do you do with an angry God in the Christian Old Testament?
Well, I mean, you just start with Jesus. You start with Jesus. That's so Jesus is the one who tells us those who live by the sword die by the sword.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is the one who tells his disciples when they are trying to defend themselves and to defend Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
and they bring out the sword and cut the dude's ear off. Jesus says, "Put your sword back in its place."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Jesus, whenever his disciples, so there's this one episode in the Gospels where Jesus sends his disciples out into the towns, and the disciples say, "Hey, what do we do when if any of these towns don't accept us?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do? Should we, go Sodom and Gomorrah on them because that's what God did in the Old
Mm-hmm.
Testament, right? Like, what do we do with the bad people, Jesus?"
Mm-hmm.
And what does Jesus say? He doesn't go the Sodom and Gomorrah route. He doesn't go the fire and brimstone route. He says, "Guys, just shake the dust off your feet and move on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to get caught in this tit for tat, violence for violence thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just stop and move on." Right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the key to interpreting the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
The Old Testament and the New Testament.
Mm-hmm.
There is a passage in the book of Acts. I forget their names. Ananias and Sapphira, is that
Yep.
it? And they're part of the early community. And the whole point of the early community is to share.
Yep.
Share what you got.
Yep.
Ananias and Sapphira decide, yeah, we're not going to share. We're just going to keep it. They get found out and they fall dead.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one of the things that's important to understand about interpreting the Bible. That generally is thought of as God killing Ananias and Sapphira.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't say that.
It doesn't.
It doesn't say it. It just says they fell dead.
Mm-hmm. Oops.
And right? Yeah, that's it. That's it. And here's where it's important to understand when we talk about literalism of the Bible that in our 21st century context, we miss a lot of what was intended to be metaphor. Did they really die? Or did they die to the community? Did they have a spiritual death? Because that metaphor is used for death throughout the Bible. Could very well be used for Ananias and Sapphira's death. So when we take the Bible literally we're missing out on so much richness that is in the Bible. Yeah. So
I preached on Jonah this past weekend, and first of all, I liked to highlight the point that Jonah is like a sassy little bitch, and he's like a little whiny baby. He's like, "Oh, you save the people I don't like. I'm just gonna go sit over here and die." Right? So I think first of all, it's hilarious to acknowledge the very human characters in the Bible. But one of the things that I found through like my studying, because and a good pastor does, we study for our sermons. We don't just pull them out of thin air, right? And when I was looking at the context of Jonah, there's so much of what I said came from looking at the political context of who the people of Nineveh were and what the nation of Assyria was and how the nation of Assyria had conquered the nation of Israel. All of those things give so much richness. And I feel like we really, like a lot of modern talk about the Bible, and I'm not even going to say theology because it's not talk about God, it's talk about the Bible, has been, it's been dumbed down to the point where we've lost the nuance in it, right? We've lost the growing edges, we've lost the crevices of the meaning, and instead we've just got this like whatever left.
Yeah. And when you make the Bible into something that it was never meant to be, the Bible is going to fail you. So, for example, I mean, like once people actually start, reading the Bible and then studying what scholars say about the Bible, you could very well go through a faith crisis because the literalism that we take into the Bible is going to get shattered. And if that happens, you have a number of choices. One of them is to change your understanding of the Bible. So, for example, Jonah, love the story. And it's a story, people. It's
correct.
You know why we know that this is a story? Because the Ninevites never repented.
Never.
They just kept on killing people. They never, Ninevites were never like, "Oh, Jonah's right. We're sorry."
Right.
They just, the whole time of the Babylonian conquest, and the Assyrians, they're just out there conquesting
left and right.
At no point do they repent. So you know that the story of Jonah is a parable. It's a parable. Right? It's a story. And this is what the Bible is doing. I want to read this. I made this TikTok and it was good. But if I do say so myself.
Chip's hat.
But my favorite thing about the TikTok is a response that somebody gave. This person's name is Comrade Palpatine. So Palps, if you're out there listening, just know that you are one of my heroes.
Palps.
He says this about like the Bible and fiction, nonfiction. Might I point out that the differentiation between fictional and non-fictional texts is relatively new development. A stable understanding of fictionality was established around Shakespearean times, such as You Like It. In other words, for 3,000 years or so, since writing was a thing, there was no real concept of fictionality. So those who wrote the Bible did not only did not care for factuality, but had no concept of it. It blows my mind. Hence, it is as misguided to dismiss the Bible as fiction as it would be to assume it is a historiographical text. For that reason, here's the best part. I find your video, as always, supreme.
Boom. Palps.
That's the only reason I read all of this. As you point out, this third space, altogether, I find it important to add the historical context here. So the third space that I think Emperor Palpatine is referring to is the Bible is not history as we would write history today. The Bible is not like a historical textbook that you would find at a high school. That's not what the Bible is trying to do. The Bible is much more than trying to write history. This is true of the ancient people altogether. They're trying to find the meaning behind history, the
Yes.
meaning of history.
Yeah.
So, are there historical things in the Bible that are wrong? Yeah. And you can try
Like a whole lot of the genealogies.
Right? You can try so hard
Yep.
to put that square peg in the round hole all you want. And if you're honest about it, you'll just get frustrated because you're treating the Bible as if it is something that it was never meant to be. It was never meant to be a historical scientific book.
Nope.
It was meant to tell stories about the meaning of the world and our place in it, and who is this God that we think we see moving in the world, and what is God doing about it? So this is where Jonah comes in. The Ninevites never repented. Jonah, as you brilliantly say, gets angry when the Ninevites in this fictional story repent. Why? Because Jonah depends on his enemies. Jonah's goodness depends on his enemies being bad and evil.
Yep. He
And
needs the contrast.
That's me, man.
Yeah. It's so accurate. I feel like in our modern context, we don't think that there's a yellow bear running around the woods dipping his hand into honey pots, right? But we still learn universal truths when we watch Winnie the Pooh, right? We don't think that there is an actual place called Middle Earth or Hogwarts. Well, most of us don't, but there might be some fandom folks that do. But we don't think those places actually exist, and yet those stories inform our life and our culture. So why can we not be intellectually honest enough to understand that the Bible is coming from that similar type of place? Like, to me, that doesn't do violence to the text. That doesn't shake anything that I believe to the core.
Oh, it makes it so much more beautiful.
Yes.
It makes it so much more interesting. Here's the thing, why as we're talking about this, well, what's the difference between the Bible and any other text? I believe the Bible is inspired in part because it gives us a revolutionary transformation in the human understanding of God. You see this in the Exodus story. God is power. So God must be with the powerful. The Exodus story, the foundation for our Jewish friends, says that God is on the side of the oppressed. The prophets come in and say God is on the side of the oppressed. Even today, we want to project, even with this Bible and Jesus, who is the full revelation of this fact, even today, we want to project God as this all-powerful figure. So humans that are all-powerful are the closest thing to God that we can see. And that ain't it.
Correct.
That ain't it. We use God to justify our oppression of others, and that is what is blasphemy.
That is the most wild bait and switch. Jesus, in whatever sense of realness that Jesus existed, right, was a brown immigrant, likely from a lower class to a poverty class individual who may or may not have been literate based on that socioeconomic demographic, who was literally forced to flee his country and seek refuge, right?
Yep.
So we go from that to George W. Bush on a naval carrier reading the book of Isaiah to declare that our war against the Middle East is holy. How that is the most ginormous bait and switch.
And if you more baiting and switching, because if you read Isaiah, he goes up, read Isaiah 10, I think it is. Oh man, Isaiah is pissed. Why? Because the political leaders, those who create statutes, are creating statutes that oppress the poor, the weak, the vulnerable, the widows and the orphans and the aliens. The aliens, folk. This is what Isaiah and the prophets over and over again are pissed off about. Our politicians, our kings are messing up, and God ain't happy with it.
Yeah.
And God set up the world in such a way where we need to care for everyone, especially the vulnerable. And if we don't, there are going to be consequences.
That is sin, right? I don't even know how I feel about the concept of sin because I was taught such a rigid, high contrast black and white version of it. But to me, if there's anything that even approaches that level of non-negotiality, it is that Jesus is positionally on the side of the poor and the oppressed. It's James Cone, the Black liberation theologian, says that if Jesus was born today, Jesus would have been born on a milk crate in a ghetto alley, right?
Mhm.
Jesus came into the world from the positionality of marginalization.
Yep. Yep.
We can't take him to the White House. It's not the same person. You're carrying something there, but it sure as hell is not the Jesus that's talked about in this parable known as the Bible.
Right. Yeah. And if Jesus is going to the White House, he's flipping tables. He's telling you, you ain't doing it right, man.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's not appealing to like take back the White House a la January 6th.
Right.
No, he's saying you've missed the entire point. This governing system will never create the kingdom of God because it's so off base, right?
Yep. That's right. That's right. So what do we do? Burn it all down? We hope for its transformation? I don't know.
Yeah, what do we do?
Well,
This is the question. Like, what value does the Bible hold in a time when it's been so incredibly misused? And what value does, by proxy, what value does Christianity hold in a world where it has been so abusive, right? Like, I want to create an interfaith, intersectional space. And I say intersectional because sometimes even the term interfaith limits, right? Because there are belief systems that would not call themselves a faith, but there's still secular humanism.
Oh, good.
And you know what I mean? There are people in places that have a system that they live by, right? 9 times out of 10, it's don't be a dick and love people, and science is real, right? But I want to create a space where we can all come together and have a conversation and make a better world. And how do I do that in an intellectually honest way as a person I am a Christian. I was born a Christian, and for me to say I wasn't a Christian would be a denial of the privilege that I have. That is the sheer and only thing that has kept me from converting at this point, is because I have benefited from Christian privilege, and I think it's my responsibility to own that and to try to make it better as opposed to run away. But how do I function in a space of any value in an intersectional space and make the world a better place when I'm coming from this really weird tradition, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you're getting at something really, you've gotten at something really important. Not that you're getting at, you've gotten there. It's like whenever I get together, whenever progressive folk from Islam or Judaism or Christianity or whatever get together, it tends to be a washing away of our particularity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to wash away my particularity.
Mm-hmm.
It's still important to me.
Correct.
Like, it matters to me for so many reasons that I am a white heterosexual male person.
Yeah.
In part, so as you beautifully point out, so that I can use my privilege in good, healthy, productive ways that tries to deconstruct systems of patriarchy and oppression.
Yeah, to redistribute the privilege.
Yeah. And also because this is who I am. And to deny my Christianity is a denial of myself, and that only leads to depression and bad things. So when I'm in those places, I want our Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist siblings to be firmly rooted in their traditions. That's what I find most interesting. Like, when we wash away our identities, I'm not interested. I want to learn from other people.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I feel like the analogy that I've found that best fits this, because all of life is trying to find analogies for truths that we experience, right? So the analogy that I've found that best encompasses the truth that I've lived into is that I'm an English as a first language speaker. That has particular bearing on my life, particular privilege, particular downsides, right? People think we're dicks because a lot of people who are English as a first language speaker dicks, right? Superiority
Yes.
reigns.
They're not wrong. They're not wrong.
They're not wrong. But like my first language will always be English, linguistically. Religiously, my first language will always be Christianity. I'm not saying you have to be a Christian. I'm not interested in this crusades level evangelism. I'm just saying I understand the world through the context of these truths. Maybe we can meet up and share things from our own backgrounds, right? Like there's a richness. You don't have to give away your particularities to come into an intersectional space. We just bring our particularities and make that intersection really, really rich. And we deal with whatever tension arises, but we're honest about who we are and where we came from.
Yeah. I love it. It's because of the rabbis that I have learned about how people in the Bible are always arguing with God. Even Moses. So this many people, American Christianity would view as heretical.
Yes.
How dare you argue with God? God is the all-powerful. You do what God wants you to do, and then you will be happy. No, it doesn't work that way. Moses comes down the mountain, breaks the tablets, gets upset with the people. God says, yeah, Moses, I'm upset with the people too. Let's kill them all off and start over again. And Moses says, remember who you are, God.
Yeah, Moses said, wait, you weren't supposed to say that.
Yeah. You are the God who is slow to anger. Remember, you are the God of steadfast love. Remember who you are, God. Right. So here Moses is arguing with God, trying to get God to remember who God is. Is that heretical? Right. For American Christianity, how dare you try to tell us who God is or tell God who God is? Like that's the height of heresy. No, actually, it's biblical.
It's biblical. It's quite biblical. In fact, history, the Bible, let's just say the Bible, because history and the Bible are not synonymous, right? The Bible doesn't frequently record the stories of people who get it all right. The Bible records the stories of people who fucked up and then became people who wanted to walk on this path that brought them back or further, depending on how you view spiritual journeys, right? I view my spiritual journey and it almost as like a spiral. So I come back around to these same things every 5-10 years, whatever, but I'm closer to who I was supposed to be, to who I was before the world got in the way. So when I view a spiritual journey, I don't want to say I want to get back anywhere or I want to go forward. Like I just want to circle closer to the middle. I just feel like it's really important. Like we don't have to say, fuck the Bible. We don't have to say, you know what I mean? I don't have to convert to find beautiful truths in Judaism. I don't need to do anything except just show up as who I am and fucking love people.
Yeah. One of the things that makes for me the Bible the most important book that's ever been written is not just because it's how it's influenced, almost everything. We talked about Shakespeare earlier.
Literally.
Right? But one of the things that's become so important to me is Rene Girard's Scapegoat Theory, and that the Bible is what he claims. I don't know if this is true, but he claims it's the first revelation of the Scapegoat Theory. Or the scapegoat, and the innocence of the scapegoat. So you see this with the prophets. The prophets come and they shake things up. Everybody unites against the prophets. Everybody, the prophets get scapegoated. This is human. Like this is the way that humans build community against a scapegoat. Prophets are innocent, but they all thought they were guilty. They were guilty of something. They were guilty of siding with the oppressed. And when you disrupt systems, they're going to come after you. And that's what happens to the prophets. But the Bible sees them as innocent and as the scapegoats, the people that get united against. And that's when we talk about the Bible revealing what it means to be human, or how we function as humans. That's a big one.
Absolutely.
That's a big one.
Yeah, whenever I read the Bible, I tend to, and I'm not trained in these fields, so I'm not going to make the claim that I'm an
Yeah,
expert, but I tend to read the Bible through like a sociological lens or a
yeah,
psychological lens,
yeah,
right?
good.
When you read the Bible and you think about the psychology of the person of Judas, right? Or you
Mhm.
think about the sociological implications of Jesus being an immigrant who may or may not have been literate. Like these things change the story. And I feel like you have to look at it from those ways for it to be of value. Because if you don't, and if you just read it from your perspective, you're doing nothing but remaking the text in the image of the world that you
Good,
understand.
good. Love it, love it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And does Judas get scapegoated? I think so.
Mhm.
Yeah. We're
Absolutely.
we're we're all like, hey, if I would have been there, I never would have done anything like that. Oh, really?
Never. Never.
Yeah, right. If I was Peter, I never would have betrayed Jesus, abandoned him.
Yep.
I would have been the one who stuck with Jesus all the way to the end, right?
Absolutely.
Uh, n- no, act if your best chance for doing that is if you are a woman
Hmm.
or a female identifying person. It is the women in the Old Testament who tend to be the ones who get it right.
Hmm. Hmm.
You see this in the prophet Huldah. Oh man, such a great story. Uh, they find this book in the temple. Ends up being the book of Deuteronomy. They quote found it. Oh, somebody in it's supposed to be written by Moses. Yeah, well, somebody in the fifth century or whenever it was, sixth century wrote it, and they found it in the temple. Hey guys, another book of Moses.
Just
None of the
appeared.
men, it just appeared. Yeah, that's awesome. None of the men knew how to interpret it. They were all like, "What is this about? I have no idea." And then they're like, "Oh, there's one person who can do this, the prophetess Huldah." So Huldah comes in and she gets it, man. She's like, and as a good prophetess, Huldah says, this says that you rulers, you politicians have messed up and things gonna go bad. That's what she says. This is not good news for us
Nope.
because we didn't do what God wants us to do.
I
So,
think it's so interesting. I had on the show a while back. I had Reverend Dr. Will Gaffney on the show, and we talked about the Women's Lectionary. And I was explaining that to someone. I was explaining that to someone recently. That this, I think it's probably this past weekend actually. And I was talking about how I was trying to explain to the audience of Conversations, who is a mixed bag, right? Uh, the lectionary is this thing that we use to make sermons and keep the church kind of like a loosely cycling in the same way, right? And basically, what Dr. Gaffney did was like she kind of like rewrote the lectionary. She stopped me. She was like, "No, I didn't rewrite the lectionary. I actually took the old lectionary, the male-centric lectionary. I lit it on fire and I threw it out the window." But I love it. Like the Bible to me, honestly, that little meme that says you'll get more conservative as you get older, and then it's a Molotov cocktail running with on fire with a spear or something. The Bible has actually just had me slide to the left, literally more and more
yeah,
as I
yeah,
as I go along in life, and it's brought me into more solidarity with my Muslim, Jewish,
yeah,
Buddhist, Taoist, you know what I mean, all Jainist friends, right? It has pulled me further to the margins. If it's pulling you to the center, you've missed something because that's
yeah.
not the book at all.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's where Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go because you're messing up.
Mm-hmm.
God's on your side. You may
Mm-hmm.
think that the gods are on your side, but uh-uh."
Mm-hmm.
So that's leftist. That's
One,
left up right there.
one time I preached a sermon and I compared the Gospels to the Gravitron Ride that you could go to at like
Okay.
county fairs, the thing that spins and it sucks you to the outside and then someone pukes
That's
and it
good.
comes back in your face. Hopefully the Bible isn't inducing vomit, but like literally it's centripetal force. It's pulling us
Yeah.
outward throughout the context of history, if we're really reading it. And to me, the things that I've learned as a human, the things that I've done wrong as an organizer and as an activist, the lessons that I've learned have taught me to listen to people who the world doesn't, It's taught me to side with the marginalized, even if I don't understand them. It's taught me that women and Black and brown people and indigenous folks and everyone that the world others are the places that the spirit, that Sophia, the feminine wisdom of God, is found in those margins. And the Bible has aligned with those experiences that I have known to be true because I felt them. Yeah. And for me, that's the value of it, because the Bible almost gives me words to explain the pull that I've had to the margins. Yeah. And I don't need to use it to prove that there was a 7-day creation, because that's lunacy, right? But I do read the stories about the prophets, and I see how they were like, you better take care of those women and children.
That's right.
And if you don't, the ground's going to swallow you up.
That's right. Yeah. And if you take that creation story and you try to make it a literal history book or a scientific book, you're going to miss the meaning of it. And we see how people have missed the meaning of it by making it into a scientific textbook. Because what is the meaning behind Genesis chapter 1? It is that the all of creation, the world and everything in it is good. It's good. And we have a responsibility for treating God's good creation as if it is good. And Christianity has gotten so far off the rails that we are not treating the earth as if it is good. We are treating it as if it's something that we can use however the hell, literally, we want.
Yeah, no, we got from kinship. We got from kinship and stewardship, right? Like, we were to have kinship with the rest of creation to dominion. I think that was one of the most pivotal things that I learned from reading a rabbinical text and reading the Hebrew Bible in its context, right? Is the difference in, you can see how the Christian understanding of Genesis 1, the literalist understanding of Genesis 1, has not only done violence to the text, but it's done violence to our world.
Amen. Yep,
because people use that we have dominion over the beast to kill off entire species, right? And it literally flipped the script to the exact opposite way that it was supposed to go.
Yeah. And I've learned since studying this more that the word there for dominion means much more to serve. It's not to rule over, but it's to serve. It's the same. I think it's the same word that is used to describe. I forget what it is. God and
I'm trying to remember, because we talked about this in systematic theology.
Yes, so it is the same word to describe somebody whose primary role is to serve. And has responsibility in it. Now, that responsibility means that you have some kind of power in it, but it's not a dominion like Christian dominionism wants us to believe. Exactly. It's not a power over and against, it's a power with. That's what that word is trying to get out. It's a caring for, not over and against. And you also miss the radicalness of Genesis chapter 1 when we make it literal, because you miss that all people are created in the image of God. And in the ancient world, nobody would ever say that. Nobody would ever say it. They would say that kings, pharaohs, created in the image of God. The political leaders who have power, they're created in the image of God because God is power. Well, here you get something revolutionary, which says the homeless person, image of God.
Yep.
That's where God is. And what are you going to do about it?
And I think when you taking this a step further, when you take that perspective and you really do, you experience that centripetal nature of the gospel, right? It puts me in solidarity with a lot of people who are doing very real work that Jesus would be doing without being a Christian, right? And I think one of the first times I experienced this sort of idea was I read Love Wins by Rob Bell, which first of all was super Christian, and then was like he was out, Christian book distributors banned him, right? Because in the beginning of Love Wins, he said, is Gandhi really in hell? And you don't even need the rest of the book if you can't get past that phrase, right? Because I don't even need I don't need someone to believe there is a God for that person and myself to co-labor in the
Right.
creation of the things that the kingdom of heaven would bring about. They don't need to believe in heaven. I don't know how I feel about heaven, if we're being honest, but I do think that we can make this world into a different thing. And I don't need to shoulder up with people who necessarily believe in God to do that. And you know what tells me that? The Bible.
Yes, that's right. That's right. Gandhi, quite possibly the most Christ-like person of the 20th century. I mean, I don't want to create, Gandhi into something
Right.
that he wasn't, but as far as his activism goes,
A continual pursuit of the betterment of the world.
Yep, that's it. Personal life, he messed up,
Yep.
and don't we all?
Yes.
That's not to excuse it, right? But
so did David, and David was in the scripture, so like
exactly. But to your point, I mean, it's just Matthew chapter 25, where the nations are brought before God, Jesus at the judgment, and they're not judged by if they believe the right things. They are judged by if they cared for those who were thirsty and hungry and without shelter. Those if they clothe the naked. I mean, this is what the nations, by the way, are judged by. There's this part in there, a mistranslation, which makes people think that it is not about the nations, political governments, that it's about people. It's a mistranslation, because in the beginning it says the nations will be brought them, and then he will judge the people. The people, that's not the word. It's them. Will judge them in the Greek. So the nations are going to be judged. This isn't primarily about individuals being judged. This is about national systems being judged if they care for the weak and the marginalized. That's how nations will be judged.
Absolutely.
Not based on religion, faith, how you treated those who are most vulnerable.
We already know that you and I are on some same level shit. We're on some same like sort of train shit. But I hope that people can listen to this conversation and understand that you don't really have to take it literally, because it's not meant to be taken literally. You don't really have to believe in God, just like that there is a value to it, right? Because I think in the way the Bible is portrayed so much in the modern world, it is absolutely been devalued, mostly by Christians, right? And I'm not here on some sort of quest of self-validation. Like I know who I am, but I hope that other people will hear a conversation like this and realize that the Bible can unite you to people who believe differently than you if you actually read it, right?
Yeah.
And that ultimately is the way that we move forward, is together.
Yep. And the Bible frequently talks about people of other nations, other religions, having an experience of God, having a true relationship with God.
Yes. Is it Rahab that's the prostitute that like she like lowers the flag down and pulls the, men of God in, says so whatever. You don't have to know this whole story, folks. Rahab was the prostitute. She was not a Christian, right? And in the story the vignette that she appears in, she is counted as the one that changed the course of a nation because of her faithfulness to God. Never once professing or praying the sinner's prayer. Right. And I think that context is glossed over. Like I said, I don't have an agenda. I don't need to prove myself, because I know I'm a better person because of the margins that I've been pulled to by reading the gospel.
Yeah.
But it has a value in a way that isn't nonsensical, right? It does make some level of sense here. It's not nonsense to say you believe in the Bible. It is nonsense to say you think that it is the only thing that can be believed in.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That one of the other great things about the Bible, and Wilda Gaffney has taught me, I think in her lectionary, is that the first person to name God in the Bible is a non-Israelite woman named Hagar. Hagar, the first person to name God.
Yep.
Now that's teaching.
Yeah.
And that's preaching. When you say women can't teach, Hagar is the first person who teaches us something incredibly important about God.
Mm-hmm.
And her son, our Muslim siblings,
Mm-hmm.
trace their lineage back to Ishmael and and what does she name God? El Roy, which means the God who sees.
Mm-hmm.
This is again where you get this radical transformation of the understanding of God given to us by this woman Hagar, because God is the one who sees those who are oppressed, those who are cast out. Hagar is the scapegoat of the story, and God sees you. That is the beauty of the Bible. Is the
chills.
You're watching, you're listening to this, you're watching this. You've been marginalized, you've been scapegoated, you've been Hagar'd, and guess what? God sees you. That changes everything.
That changes abso-fucking-lutely everything. I mean, like, the hairs on my arm are standing up because, like, to me, whether you believe in the Christian God, whether you believe in Allah, which for the record is not necessarily separate from the Christian God, but that's a whole other conversation. Whether you believe in spirits, whether you believe in energy, the universe, whatever you call it, if there is an overarching sense of divinity and interconnectedness, and that overarching sense of divinity and interconnectedness sees you, that's fucking powerful.
Yeah, it is.
That's like get you off the edge of a ledge shit right there, right? That gets you moving out of your own sadness and into a place of helping and loving others. And that's the shit that changes and saves lives.
Beautiful.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know. And I just, I don't know. I don't know what else to say because I see the value in that, but I want it to make sense to people who haven't necessarily gone to seminary and done the insane amount of reading that we've had to do, right? Or the same insane amount of study. And I think that that's why I am so passionate about the fact that I'm called to be a pastor. It makes no sense. I literally am spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to eventually one day get past gatekeeping to make literal poverty wages. But like I have the ability to have these sorts of conversations, and to me that feels impactful, you know.
Me too.
Right. All right. Yeah. I know you get it, right? It has the ability to do things like help set the captives free, or you know, you have a sign behind you that says "Free Palestine." Like this is I know we've done an Israel-Palestine video, so I won't rehash it all, but like these sort of truths should be the truths that would move us to do things like free Palestine.
Yep, absolutely. It's the judgment of the nations.
Yeah.
We're going to be judged by how we treated Palestinians.
Yeah.
And may God have mercy on our souls.
Absolutely.
So
I don't know. That stuff moves me to vote. That sort of stuff moves me to choose how I spend my money and time. That sort of stuff moves me to volunteer. Like these things are all deeply connected for me. And I think that's at the end of the day, I've become a better person because of the things I've learned because of reading the Bible. And I hope that some folks can hear this and know either A, at least those crazy people aren't totally off the rails, or B, you can be whoever you are and still claim that faith. For me, as a queer person, you have to give up so much shit to come out, right? And I am absolutely done acquiescing. Like, if you don't like that I'm a queer Christian, you can choke. You can die mad, because this is mine too. And I'm not giving anything else up. Is Christianity like the worst shit to try to hang on to? Yeah, it's been a real bad shitstorm for a long time, but it's my shitstorm.
And we are responsible for cleaning up the shitstorm.
Yep. And no one's responsible to save their abuser. I'm not saying that. You get to leave and you get to disengage if you've been harmed. But for me, it's the sense of calling is a little bit different. And that's okay. You can, if you need to disengage and you need to walk away, and you need to do that, because you're not required to save your abuser, right? But for me, I'm required to stay. And I don't even think I have to fight. I just have to exist, honestly, because people get so pissed about me just existing. I don't even have to fight, you know?
I am so glad that you exist. my friend, and I'm so glad that our paths crossed.
I have to agree. You were the first big Hail Mary I sent out on the podcast. I was like, if I can get this guy, that would be dope. And you responded to me like immediately. So it set a trajectory.
And now you're talking to Will Gaffney.
I know.
And I'm like, man, I would love to talk with Will Gaffney.
I almost peed my pants when she said she will come on the podcast. I was like, I am out of my weight class, folks. I am out of my weight class. I was just like hoping to not say the wrong thing because she's so freaking dope, honestly.
Right? Yes. That is so good.
So I have a question for you, and this is pretty much the same question that I end every podcast with, so you may or may not remember it. But if there's one thing that you would hope folks could take from this conversation, right? You have a sentence, and that sentence, is going to be emblazoned on people's minds. What would you hope that was?
I mean, God is love, and in God there is no darkness at all. God is love, and God is light, and in God there is no darkness at all.
That's it.
Everything has been revealed through this dude named Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And in Christ we receive grace upon grace, not violence upon violence, not hell upon hell, grace upon grace.
And conversely, in the negative space of that comment, if you're not bringing grace and love, who are you channeling?
That's right.
I don't know.
Not
certainly
not
not. No, because like that just is a logical impossibility, right?
Yep.
I could go on. Well, I think conversations like this are fascinating. So I don't want to take up all your time, but Pastor Adam, is there anywhere that you want people to go to follow you if they're not already? What's the best way for them to find you?
Oh, can you hear my dog barking?
Hi, puppy.
My dog is like, feed me.
He's on the way.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm coming, Mac. I'm coming. I'm on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, TikTok and Instagram are probably the places where I get the most conversations. You can follow me on my website, and also would love for you to come check out One Question with Pastor Adam. I try to do it live on Thursdays at 11 o'clock Pacific on my Facebook page and on the Clackamas UCC YouTube channel. So we get like lots of good interactions. So if you got something to say, you can put it in the chat section and I'll bring you up, and it's a great conversation.
Absolutely. And for anyone who's looking, if you don't know, if you really like what Pastor Adam had to say and you want to hear more, Pastor Adam's church meets digitally, so you can join in his community in like worship, in solidarity on Sundays. I usually catch it on Facebook because I'm old. My son tells me only old people have Facebook, but that's where I catch it. But that the Clackamas United Church of Christ is actually incredibly open and accessible, and there's more than one of Pastor Adam's parishioners that have been like huge supports to me as a person. So there is communities out there.
They're good people. Yeah, that's at 8:30 Pacific on Sundays. So
awesome. Pastor Adam, thank you so much. I hope you have a good evening. I hope to get you to see your kids. I hope Mac gets to eat, and I look forward to bringing that like that quad Pete to you pretty soon.
My friend, I love you, and it is always a joy to talk with you, and thank you for your excellent work.
Thank you so much. I will talk to you soon. Everybody who's watching this, I hope you have a great evening, and I hope you've realized that every voice matters in this conversation. Join us in the comments. Join us on our socials. We would love to talk to you. This is literally what Pastor Adam and I do for a living. It is the single best thing that we can do, is have these kind of conversations with every person we encounter. So, Pastor Adam, have a great night. Everybody watching, have a great night, and we'll see you at the next conversation. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.